Okay, welcome back. Now, because you're working in raw code in this course, without the training wheels of a fancy web development application, you are going to make mistakes. 100% guaranteed you will. All web developers do. You've seen me make mistakes in this course. And though your browser and the browsers of your users will do their very best to fail gracefully, your web page will sometimes look weird somehow. And you won't know why, and you'll have to comb through your code to figure out what you did wrong. Well, what did you get wrong? I can't say. You'll have to find it. I can't list all the ways in which things can go wrong, but let's look at some of the very, very most common ways in which developers make mistakes. So let's start by looking at this link down here, the mail to link. This was the link where our user will see contact, and when they click on that link, their default mail program will open up with a message already pre-addressed and already with a subject filled in. Remember that? So this is a pretty long attribute right here, lots of letters and numbers. And what if we kind of inadvertently forgot to put the quotation mark at the end of that value? One tiny little mistake. I'll save that change. We'll come over here and reload. See, there's the contact link there. As soon as I reload, though, it disappears. And in fact, our picture disappears as well, because the browser has had a hard time figuring out what this long string of code that doesn't seem to end is actually about. So it'd be very easy as a developer to be scratching your head over this. This looks pretty darn good. We've got our start tag, we've got our attribute name, we've set it equal to, we've got our quotation mark, and then we're doing all this information here, which all looks really good. And there's our end tag, and you're wondering, what did I do wrong? And you have to look very closely to realize, oh, silly me, I left out that quotation mark at the very end. So we'll put that back in, we'll save the change, go back in, reload, and now we're good to go once again. What if we completely forgot to leave out a quotation mark, to have our quotation marks at all? This is an interesting one. Okay, we've set href equal to, and we should have quotation mark, index.html, quotation mark, but we leave both out in this case. Save the change, reload. The funny thing is, this actually works in this browser, and in fact it'll probably work in many browsers. It's not the right way to do it, but it's one of those mistakes where browsers will very often get it right in the name of failing gracefully. I'm going to go ahead and put them back in though, and save the change. You can imagine though, remember when we learned about these special symbols here? The %20, and placing those in there rather than having the space. And we saw too that many browsers would still get this right even if we used actual spaces. They would still put those in there. Let's save that change, reload. We can see this seems to be working just fine. We can click that link, mail fires up, and everything has worked just fine. But in this case now, what if we forgot both of our quotation marks? What is the browser going to make of this? Click the link, and you'll see here it has done its best to fail gracefully. It's done a pretty good job. It's opened up an email, it's addressed it correctly, but then it's taken that first space as the end of the value for the href attribute and only put in the word hello. So, the best practice, the correct way to do it, is to always have your quotation marks so that the browser has no confusion about where the value ends. And I'm going to go ahead and place back in my %20s there for the value as well, just to be really safe. Okay, so we've got this all back. All right, let's look at another possible mistake that many developers make. And remember when we first started off this course, I had you go into the preferences for TextEdit, and I had you take off the smart quotes so that we would just have what some people call dumb quotes, quotes that are the very same no matter where they appear in relation to a quote. I'm going to copy and paste this line over to Word rather than mess with TextEdit. And I'm going to come in here, and Word is by default set up to do smart quotes, which is often what you want in Word. Now it's a very subtle difference here, but if you look closely, you can see that this quotation mark, which is an opening quotation mark, it's slightly angled in one way. And this quotation mark is slightly angled in a different way, so that we know the difference between an opening quotation mark and a closing quotation mark. And that's great when you're writing text for a user to read. But in code, this becomes a problem. So I'm grabbing this, I'm going to copy and paste it back over here. And to the casual eye, this looks like it's perfectly fine. We see our start tag, href equals to, we see a quotation mark, we see a value, we see another quotation mark, everything looks good. It'd be very easy to miss that these are in fact smart quotation marks, an opening and a closing quotation mark. But let's see what happens if those sneak in. Now you can see that this value, that home, is still showing up to the user, and it's still something that I can click on. But when I do, it tries to go to a page named opening quotation mark index.html closing quotation mark, which is not what we wanted. And that's the kind of change that would be really, really easy to not be able to see by a casual look. So I'm going to go in there and replace this with good old-fashioned dumb quotes. Save the change, reload, and we're back in business. It's working because it's taking us right back to the same page. And there we go. Okay, one more common change, one more common error. So let's say when we did our heading up here for Vinyl Vultures, remember we made that instead of a regular paragraph, we tagged it as a heading so that it would show up in a larger and bolder text. Let's say that we remembered to have our start tag there, but forgot to have our end tag. Now we've seen that with some elements you can get away with doing this and it won't cause any problems. But in this case, if I have my start tag for the H1, for the heading, and I forget to have the end tag, watch what happens. Whoa! Suddenly all of my text has gotten big and bold. Even though I look in here and I see, well, no, I've told this to be a regular paragraph. I've got my start and end tag there. I've got my start and my end tag there. These should all be showing up in regular paragraph text. It's not until I realize that I'm up here and I've started my heading tag and I've forgotten to end it that I realize, oh, that's why this is happening. So I'll come back in, put in my end tag, and this is again why I try to be really diligent about putting in end tags all the time, even in cases where you can get away without it. Just avoids a lot of confusion. So I've placed it back in, save the changes, reload, and we're back the way that we intended. Okay, so there are so many more ways in which you can make mistakes as a web developer. Everybody does it. Don't think that it makes you a bad developer. This is just a very complicated thing to do sometimes, and it's really easy for little changes to get in there and cause problems. But if you take a close look, you can often figure out what's going on, and it's often easy to fix, as we can see. So, nice job. That's the end of this lecture, and I'll see you in the next. Take care.